What if I told you there's a weapon more dangerous to America than nuclear bombs? A weapon that doesn't create mushroom clouds, doesn't kill millions in an instant, but could collapse the global economy in weeks. A weapon that costs almost nothing to deploy, that the world's most powerful military can't fully counter, and that Iran just activated. This is the Strait of Hormuz, 33 kilometers of water that controls 20% of the world's oil supply, $500 billion in annual trade, the economic lifeline of the entire planet. On March 2, 2026, an Iranian commander said 5 words that sent shockwaves around the world. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. And for the first time in history, it actually happened. This is the story of how Iran brought the global economy to its knees. Not with missiles, not with nuclear weapons, but with geography, cheap drones, and a strategy that terrifies the Pentagon more than anything in its arsenal. Welcome to Forbidden Frontiers. Let's dive in. Okay, before we get into what just happened, let me explain why this tiny strip of water matters so much. The Strait of Hormuz sits at the entrance to the Persian Gulf, right here between Iran and Oman. At its narrowest point, it's just 21 miles wide. The shipping lanes, even narrower, roughly 3 kilometers in each direction. That's it, 2 skinny corridors of water, and through them flows the lifeblood of the global economy. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, around 20 million barrels of oil pass through this strait every single day. That's worth about $500 billion in annual global energy trade. But it's not just oil. 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, LNG, flows through here, most of it from Qatar, one of the world's largest producers. 30% of Europe's jet fuel, a third of the world's fertilizer trade, aluminum, sugar, petrochemicals. If you've ever filled your car with gas, heated your home, or eaten food grown with modern fertilizers, you're connected to this strait. Asia is especially vulnerable. China gets 40% of its oil imports through Hormuz, Japan 70%, South Korea, India, Pakistan, all massively dependent on this single choke point. One analyst put it perfectly: when analysts have looked at the things that could go wrong in global oil markets, this is about as wrong as things could go at any single point of failure. And here's the thing, look at the map. Iran controls the entire northern shore of this strait. Their military bases, their missiles, their drones, they're right there, watching every ship that passes. For decades, the question wasn't if Iran could close this strait, it was whether they ever would. Because everyone assumed the same thing: Iran needs the strait too, they export their own oil through it, closing it would be economic suicide. That assumption was wrong. Iran has been threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz for over 40 years. Every time there's a crisis with the West, sanctions, nuclear negotiations, military tensions, Iranian officials say the same thing: we can shut it down. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, there was something called the Tanker War. Both sides attacked oil ships in the Gulf. The U.S. Navy escorted tankers through the strait to keep oil flowing. It was tense, ships were hit, sailors died, but the strait stayed open. In 2019, there were mysterious attacks on oil tankers near the strait. The U.S. blamed Iran, tensions spiked, but the strait stayed open. In 2023 and 2024, Iran's Houthi allies in Yemen attacked ships in the Red Sea, another critical waterway. Global shipping was disrupted, costs skyrocketed. But the Strait of Hormuz, it stayed open. Then came February 28, 2026. The United States and Israel launched coordinated airstrikes on Iran. They called it Operation Epic Fury. The strikes were massive: military facilities, nuclear sites, command centers, and critically, they killed Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei. For Iran, this was existential, not just an attack on military infrastructure, an assassination of their most powerful leader, a declaration of total war. And Iran responded with the one weapon they'd been holding in reserve for 40 years. Within hours, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps began broadcasting warnings to ships. No ship of any type is allowed to pass the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is banned for all ships. And ships listened, because what came next proved Iran wasn't bluffing. Within 48 hours, tanker traffic through the strait dropped by 70%. By March 2nd, it had essentially stopped. Over 150 ships anchored outside the strait, waiting, afraid to move. A leading energy analyst said, "We're now facing what looks like the biggest energy crisis since the oil embargo in the 1970s. And that was just the beginning. Here's what most people expected if Iran ever tried to close the strait. A naval blockade, warships facing off, mines in the water, maybe a direct confrontation with the US Navy. Something big, something expensive, something the world's most powerful military could counter with its overwhelming firepower. Instead, Iran used this. This is the Shahed 136. It's a drone made of foam and plywood, powered by a small engine that sounds like a lawnmower. It's about 3.5 meters long, weighs around 200 kilograms, carries a warhead of 40-50 kilograms of explosives. And here's the key number. It costs between $20,000 and $50,000 to build. That's it, the price of a mid-range car. Now compare that to what it's threatening. An oil supertanker can be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The cargo inside, hundreds of millions more. The insurance to protect it, millions per voyage. And the missiles the US uses to shoot down drones, an SM-2 interceptor costs around $2 million. An SM-6 can cost $5 million. So Iran is spending $20,000 to make the US spend $5 million in response. That's a 100-to-1 cost advantage, maybe 250-to-1, and Iran doesn't have just one of these drones. Some estimates suggest Iran has built up stockpiles of 70,000 drones or more, stored in underground facilities, ready to launch. In the first week of the war alone, they launched thousands. As one security analyst put it, Iran's strategy is premised upon sending cheap drones that the US needs to shoot down with expensive interceptors. Tehran is attempting to pursue a strategy of death by 1,000 paper cuts to bleed US and Israeli defenses. This isn't theoretical, we've seen it work. Russia has launched over 57,000 Shahed drones at Ukraine. They've become so common that Ukrainians call them mopeds because of the buzzing sound they make. Ukraine intercepts most of them, but even at an 80% intercept rate, 20% get through. That's thousands of successful strikes on power plants, infrastructure, cities. Now imagine that same strategy, but targeting oil tankers, ports, energy infrastructure, the narrow shipping lanes of the Strait of Hormuz. From their bases, Iran can hit anything in the Gulf. Saudi oil facilities, UAE ports, Qatari LNG plants, Bahrain's Navy base, every single ship trying to pass through the strait. This is Iran's secret weapon, not a nuke, a swarm. An IRGC commander put it bluntly, if anyone tries to pass, the heroes of the Revolutionary Guards will set those ships ablaze. And that's exactly what they did. Let me walk you through exactly how Iran closed the world's most important waterway. Because here's the thing, they didn't actually need to sink a single ship to do it. February 28, 2026, Operation Epic Fury begins. The US and Israel launch massive airstrikes across Iran. Within hours, Iran's supreme leader is dead. Nuclear facilities are hit, military bases are burning. That same night, the IRGC starts broadcasting warnings. Ships in and around the strait receive radio messages. The strait is closed, all ships are banned. At first, some ships keep moving. Late on February 28th, outgoing traffic is heavy, captains trying to get out before things get worse. Incoming traffic, almost zero. Smart captains aren't willing to enter a potential war zone. Then the attacks start. At least 3 tankers are struck near the strait. One off Oman is set ablaze. The Steno Imperative, a US-flagged ship, is hit twice at the port of Bahrain. Port workers killed, fires burning, crews evacuating, and here's where Iran's genius becomes clear. They didn't need to sink every ship, they just needed to make the risk unacceptable. Before the war, insurance for a ship transiting the strait cost about 0.125% of the ship's value. After the attacks, it jumped to 0.2%, then 0.4%. For a supertanker worth $100 million, that's an increase of hundreds of thousands of dollars per trip. Then, on March 5th, the protection and indemnity insurance companies did something unprecedented. They pulled coverage entirely. No insurance company would cover ships going through the strait, which meant no shipping company could legally send their vessels through. Major container shipping companies, Maersk, CMA CGM, Hapag-Lloyd, all suspended transits, not because their ships were destroyed, because they couldn't get insurance. A Greek shipping CEO said, "The priority for the industry is not just moving cargo, but protecting the lives of seafarers, the value of vessels, and avoiding what could become a major environmental disaster." The analyst Helima Croft explained, all Iran had to do was several drone strikes in the vicinity of the Strait of Hormuz, and all of a sudden, insurers and shipping companies decided that it was unsafe to traverse that very narrow S-curve of that waterway. By March 2nd, just 3 days after the war started, no tankers were broadcasting signals in the strait. Traffic went to essentially zero. Iran had done what no one thought possible, not through a naval blockade, not through a massive military operation. Through cheap drones and fear. An insurance-driven shutdown. The most powerful navy in the world couldn't stop it, because you can't bomb an insurance policy. One expert noted this seems to have caught the White House off guard. They were prepared for mines, for missiles, for naval confrontations. They weren't prepared for paperwork. Let's talk about how Iran's drone strategy actually works, because it's brilliant in its simplicity. Iranian state media released footage of vast underground tunnels filled with drones, rows upon rows of Shahed models ready to launch. The Shahed is what's called a loitering munition or kamikaze drone. It flies to a target area sometimes over 1,000 miles away and then dives into whatever it's aimed at. It uses satellite navigation and a pre-programmed route. It's accurate enough to hit specific buildings, specific ships, specific radar installations. And unlike ballistic missiles, which require massive launch facilities, the Shahed can be launched from the back of a truck. Hidden anywhere, dispersed across Iran. The strategy is simple: overwhelm the enemy with numbers. America's air defense systems, Patriot missiles, THAAD interceptors are incredibly sophisticated. They can track and destroy incoming threats with remarkable accuracy. But they have one critical weakness: magazine depth. Each Patriot battery only carries so many missiles. Each Aegis destroyer only has so many interceptors. When those are gone, they're gone. Resupplying takes time. Building new missiles takes months. And remember the cost equation: a $20,000 drone forcing you to fire a $2 million missile. Reports indicate Iran has successfully hit some of America's most advanced radar systems with these cheap drones. An early warning radar in Qatar worth over $1 billion damaged. THAAD sensors in the UAE struck. U.S. Navy communication terminals in Bahrain destroyed. As one defense analyst put it, Iran's suicide drones are successfully striking high-value U.S. radar systems. This cost-imposition strategy uses drones valued at roughly $20,000 to disable systems worth hundreds of millions. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The U.S. military saw this strategy working and decided, if you can't beat them, copy them. Meet the LUCAS, the Low-Cost Uncrewed Combat Attack System, also called the FLM-136. It's an American drone, reverse-engineered from a captured Iranian Shahed. A U.S. admiral described it openly. They captured a Shahed, took it apart, shipped it home, reverse-engineered it, modified it, and brought it back made in America to use against Iran. An Iranian official reportedly gloated, "There's no greater honor than seeing self-proclaimed superpowers kneel before an Iranian drone and copy it." Now American versions of Iranian drones are being launched at Iranian targets. The student has become the teacher. The weapon has been turned around. But the damage to the global economy already done. So what happens when 20% of the world's oil supply suddenly stops flowing? Chaos, that's what happens. Before the war, oil was trading around $73 a barrel. Within days, it crossed $100 for the first time since 2022. Brent crude saw swings of 10–17% in single days. In America, gas prices jumped 50 cents a gallon within the first 2 weeks of the conflict. The average price hit $3.54 per gallon and climbing. President Trump called it a very small price to pay, but for millions of Americans already struggling with inflation, every penny matters. But oil isn't even the worst of it. The liquefied natural gas market is in freefall. Qatar, one of the world's largest LNG exporters, halted production after Iranian drones struck their facilities. Qatar supplies 20% of global LNG and nearly all of it flows through Hormuz. European natural gas futures jumped 30% overnight. LNG tanker freight rates surged 40%. An energy analyst warned, "I don't think in the first few days of this conflict there is an appreciation for the length of time that Qatar is going to be offline and the effect it will have on global supply." Then there's fertilizer. Roughly 1/3 of global fertilizer trade transits the Strait of Hormuz. Urea prices have already jumped from $475 to $680 per metric ton. And this is happening right at the start of the spring planting season in America's heartland. If farmers can't get affordable fertilizer, food prices will spike next year. It goes further. The Asian garment industry relies on petrochemicals from the Gulf. Aluminum from the UAE passes through the strait. Pharmaceutical ingredients, plastics, electronics. When ships can't go through Hormuz, they have to go around Africa, adding weeks to delivery times and massive costs. The International Energy Agency took the unprecedented step of announcing it would release 400 million barrels from strategic reserves, the largest release in history, just to stabilize markets. Asia is being hit hardest. Japan gets 70% of its Middle Eastern oil through Hormuz. Refiners are asking the government to release stockpiled oil. South Korea has only 3-4 weeks of LNG reserves. Pakistan and Bangladesh face potential blackouts. India is considering deploying its navy to protect oil shipments. Even Iraq, a major oil producer, is being forced to shut down production in its largest fields. Without being able to export through Hormuz, they have nowhere to put their oil. Kuwait declared force majeure and cut production. The UAE followed suit. All of this, the price spikes, the supply disruptions, the cascading economic damage from a few hundred drones in a closed insurance market. According to the IMF, every 10% rise in oil prices corresponds with 0.4% higher inflation and 0.15% lower economic growth. We're already well past that threshold. So what is the United States doing about all this? President Trump announced that the U.S. would offer naval escorts to protect tankers, similar to what happened during the 1980s tanker war. The Navy is actively patrolling, aircraft carriers are in position. American forces have struck Iranian warships and destroyed mine layers near the strait. Trump warned that if Iran has placed mines in the strait, there will be military consequences at a level never seen before. Central Command confirmed destroying 16 Iranian mine layers, then 28. The military is trying to keep the passage clear, but here's the problem: you can destroy drones and ships. You can't force insurance companies to issue policies. You can't force ship captains to risk their crews. A shipping executive made it clear, normal traffic won't resume until companies are confident that the trip is genuinely safe. And right now it's not. Even as we record this, ships are still being hit. 3 vessels struck near the strait just this morning. Iranian drones are still flying. The war is still raging. Iran has said it will keep the strait closed to ships from the US, Israel, and Western allies. The IRGC has demanded recognition of Iran's legitimate rights, reparations, and guarantees against future aggression. So far, there's no diplomatic resolution in sight. Some analysts predict the strait could partially reopen in 2-3 weeks if the conflict de-escalates. Others warn this could drag on for months. But regardless of how this specific crisis ends, one thing has been proven beyond doubt: the world's economy is built on a choke point, a 33-kilometer strip of water, and a nation with $20,000 drones can hold it hostage. One defense expert warned, the intersection of technological change and unit economics first seen in Ukraine is now on display in Iran. Precise mass, high-volume use of low-cost drones will likely become a regular feature of warfare moving forward. If Iran can do this with Shahed drones, who else could replicate it? At the Suez Canal, the Strait of Malacca, the Panama Canal, this isn't just about one war or one strait. This is about the future of conflict. The future of global trade. The future of who holds power in a world dependent on narrow waterways. For 40 years, Iran threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz. For 40 years, the world didn't believe them. Now we know better. The weapon Iran has that scares the US more than nukes isn't a warhead. It's a waterway. 33 kilometers that control 20% of global oil, $500 billion in annual trade, the jugular vein of the world economy. And the tools to threaten it: cheap drones, insurance forms, geography. You can't nuke your way out of this problem. You can't sanction geography. You can't shoot down a closed insurance policy. This is the new face of warfare, and we're all living through it. If this video helped you understand what's happening and why it matters to your life, your wallet, your future, hit that subscribe button. Here at Forbidden Frontiers, we break down the world's most dangerous, most restricted, and most misunderstood geopolitical flashpoints. The places and conflicts that shape everything, often without us even knowing. Click here to watch our video on the 10 most restricted countries you can't visit, including more on Iran and the forces that led to this crisis. I'm Forbidden Frontiers. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous weapons aren't the biggest ones.